everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be uh, diving into something that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's this whole world of AI slop. You heard about this?
Oh yeah, it's everywhere these days.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it's fascinating, right? Like
Yeah.
you've got these AI-generated images popping up all over the internet.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like you're scrolling through, I don't know, let's say you're looking for
Like an online marketplace.
yeah, you're on Etsy or something, you're looking for that perfect vintage
Or like a record player.
yeah, record player. And the picture is just too perfect,
Too pristine.
too flawless, and you're kind of like, "Wait a minute.
Is this real?
Yeah, is this real or is this AI?"
That's what we're going to be unpacking today.
Yeah, it's like a tidal wave of these AI images.
And it's interesting because, AI image generation tools like Midjourney and DALL-E,
Right.
they're super cool. Like the technology is incredible.
Oh, the potential is mind-blowing. Yeah.
But it's almost like the sheer volume of what they're churning out.
It's leading to some unintended consequences.
Exactly.
I mean, you see it everywhere. Social media, marketplaces, even some news sites are getting tricked.
It's crazy. And, what's interesting to me is this whole shift towards quantity over quality.
Exactly. It's like the Wild West out there.
Yeah, it's like more images. But are they good images?
Right. And what does that do to our trust in visual information?
Okay, so that's a big question, right? Like, as these AI tools become more sophisticated, more accessible.
It gets harder and harder to tell what's real and what's not.
Yeah, so where does that leave us? Like, how do we navigate this new landscape?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. Just knowing that this is happening.
Okay, so awareness. Got it.
But then we need to equip ourselves with the knowledge to actually spot these AI-generated fakes.
Okay, so like, what are the telltale signs?
Right. Like, what are the clues that can tip us off that something's not quite right?
Right, so let's dive into that.
Okay, so one of the classic giveaways is the hands. AI often struggles with human anatomy.
Oh yeah, the hands. I've seen those.
Yeah, you get these weird, distorted hands, fingers that are...
Like strangely bent or too long.
Exactly. It's like they don't quite understand how hands actually work.
It's like they've never actually held anything in their lives,
Right. And the proportions are often off. Like the hands might be too big for the body.
Or too small. It's just weird.
It's the uncanny valley of hands. And it's not just hands. Look at the faces, too.
Okay, faces, what about them?
Sometimes they'll be slightly asymmetrical.
Like one eye's a little bit higher than the other.
Exactly. Or the mouth might be kind of wonky.
So it's these little inconsistencies that we need to be paying attention to.
Absolutely. And then there's the textures. AI tends to oversimplify textures. So you might see overly smooth skin.
Okay, yeah, like that plastic-looking skin.
Exactly. Or like if there's water in the image, it might blend oddly with rocks or other objects.
It's like the AI doesn't quite understand how different materials interact.
Right, like it knows what things are supposed to look like, but it doesn't quite grasp the nuances of
The physics of it all.
the physics, the textures, the way light plays on surfaces. And speaking of light,
Lighting, yeah, that's another one, right?
huge giveaway. Shadows are often a dead giveaway.
Like they're falling the wrong direction.
Yeah, or they're just not quite right, like they're too sharp or too blurry.
It's like the AI is still learning how light works in the real world. And what about text? Can AI generate realistic-looking text?
It's getting better, but if you look closely, you'll often see errors, especially on things like signs or packaging.
So like jumbled letters, weird spacing, that kind of thing?
Exactly. It might look okay at first glance, but if you zoom in, you'll see those little mistakes that betray the AI's hand.
It's like those CAPI TCHA tests that try to trick you with distorted letters.
Kind of, yeah. Like the AI hasn't quite mastered the intricacies of human language.
Okay, so we've got distorted hands, strange textures, wonky text, unrealistic lighting. There's a lot to keep in mind. But let's say we're looking at an image and we're still not sure.
Right.
Are there any tools out there that can help us analyze images and confirm our suspicions?
There are actually. There are tools like photo forensics that let you examine the metadata of an image.
Of the data.
And that can reveal signs of manipulation. And then there are newer tools like Reality Defender and Sensity AI.
Oh, I've heard of those.
They use algorithms to specifically look for characteristics of AI-generated content.
So it's like using AI to detect AI.
Exactly. It's a bit of a digital arms race, but it's fascinating.
It is. It's like we're creating these tools to outsmart the tools we created in the first place.
It's the circle of technology.
So, okay, besides these visual cues and tools, are there any like broader patterns or scenarios that might signal the presence of AI slop? Like, where should we be extra cautious?
Think about the context. If you're on, let's say, a lesser-known online marketplace, there's a higher chance of encountering AI-generated product images.
Makes sense. They might be prioritizing speed and cost effectiveness over,
Authenticity, yeah.
so it's buyer beware, essentially.
In a way, yeah. And it's not just marketplaces. Think about news outlets, social media.
Where the spread of misinformation is already a huge problem.
Exactly. And AI-generated images could easily be used in disinformation campaigns.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine a fabricated image of a political event going viral.
And people believing it's real.
Exactly. The potential for manipulation is huge.
So it's not just about aesthetics anymore. It's about truth. It's about trust.
It's about how we perceive reality.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It is. It really underscores the importance of being critical thinkers and informed consumers of information.
Okay, so we've got these ethical considerations, the potential for misinformation, manipulation, and then this whole issue of, like, what happens when the internet is just saturated with
bland AI-generated content.
Yeah, it's like, where does human creativity fit into all of this?
That's a big question, and one we need to be asking ourselves as we move forward.
It's almost like we're opening a Pandora's box.
In a way, yeah. But hopefully we can find ways to manage these challenges.
Well, I certainly hope so. So before we jump into potential solutions, I want to touch on another aspect of this.
Okay.
The ethical side of things. I mean, who owns an AI-generated image? And what happens when these tools are trained on copyrighted artwork?
Yeah, that's a thorny issue. Is it fair use or is it theft?
It's a legal and ethical gray area,
That's
for sure.
a big one. And then there's the issue of aesthetic dilution.
Right. Like, what happens when the internet is just flooded with AI-generated images that all look the same?
It's like, does that stifle human creativity?
Do we lose that unique perspective, that spark of originality?
These are all valid concerns, and I think they're at the heart of a lot of the debates happening right now around AI art and image generation.
So we've got these ethical dilemmas, the potential for misinformation and manipulation, and this fear of, like,
A bland, homogenized online aesthetic.
Exactly. So what are we doing about it? What are some of the steps being taken to combat AI slop and, frankly, to mitigate its potential harms?
Well, there are some promising developments on the horizon. Things like watermarking initiatives where AI-generated images are embedded with invisible markers.
Okay. Yes.
And of course, the development of more sophisticated AI detection tools. But technology alone can't solve this problem.
So what else needs to happen? Where do we go from here?
I think we need a multi-pronged approach. We need to educate the public about AI slop, help people develop critical thinking skills.
So, like, digital literacy campaigns.
Exactly. And maybe even explore legal frameworks that promote transparency and accountability in AI development.
That's a tall order, but it sounds like it's necessary. We've got a lot to unpack here, so let's dive deeper into potential solutions, and then I want to get your insights on the broader societal implications of this AI slop phenomenon.
Let's do it. This is where things get really interesting. We've been talking about all the potential downsides,
Yeah, the dark side of AI slop.
Exactly, but I think it's important to remember that
It's not all doom and gloom.
not at all. There are some really interesting things happening in terms of combating AI slop.
Okay, so give me some hope here. What are people doing to fight back against this tidal wave of AI images?
Well, for starters, the AI detection tools are getting better and better.
Yeah, we talked about those a bit earlier. But how are they actually being used? Like, are they accessible to everyday people?
Absolutely. I mean, there are free apps, browser extensions, you name it.
Wow, so it's becoming easier to actually check if an image is AI generated.
Exactly. And even some social media platforms are integrating AI detection features right into their platforms.
So you can kind of fact check an image right there in your feed.
Pretty much, yeah. But of course, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game.
Right, because as the detection tools get smarter, the AI image generators are probably getting smarter too.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant arms race,
So we always have to be one step ahead. What else is happening beyond detection? Is there anything being done to address those ethical concerns we talked about?
Yeah, definitely. One really interesting development is this whole movement towards digital watermarking.
Okay, remind me what that is again.
So basically, some AI developers are embedding invisible markers in the images they create, like a digital fingerprint.
So it's like a secret code that says, hey, this was made by AI.
Exactly. And that way, even if an image is shared or manipulated, we can still trace it back to its source.
That seems like a pretty smart way to address some of those concerns about misinformation and copyright issues.
It is. It adds a layer of transparency and accountability to the whole process.
But I'm guessing not all AI developers are jumping on board with this watermarking idea.
Well, some might see it as a disadvantage, right?
Yeah, if you're trying to create images that are indistinguishable from real photos, a watermark kind of gives the game away.
Exactly. It's a tough balance. But that's why I think education and critical thinking are so important.
Okay, so it's not just about relying on technology to solve the problem.
Right. We need to equip people with the skills to think critically about the images they see online.
So it's like that whole media literacy thing, but for the digital age.
Exactly. We need to help people understand how visual media is created, how it can be manipulated, and how AI is playing a role in all of this.
It's like we need a whole new set of tools for navigating this visual landscape.
We do, and we need to start having these conversations early on, like in schools and in our communities.
Yeah, it's about empowering people to become more discerning consumers of digital content.
Absolutely. We can't just passively accept everything we see online. We need to question, we need to analyze, we need to think critically.
Okay, so we've got detection tools, we've got watermarking, we're talking about education and critical thinking. What about the big picture? Like, are governments getting involved in this at all?
They are, actually. There's a growing recognition among policymakers that AI needs some kind of regulation.
So it's not just a tech issue anymore, it's becoming a policy issue.
Exactly. And it's not just about safety, it's about ethics, it's about societal impact.
Wow, so this is really starting to feel like a turning point.
It is. The choices we make now about how we govern AI are going to have huge implications for the future.
Okay, so we've got a lot of moving pieces here, but let's bring it back down to the individual level. What can our listeners do right now to navigate this wild world of AI slop?
Honestly, I think the most important thing is to cultivate a healthy dose of skepticism.
Like, don't believe everything you see.
Exactly. Question the source, consider the context, look for those telltale signs we talked about. If something seems off, it probably is.
So it's like honing our visual BS detectors.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to use those AI detection tools we talked about.
They're out there, they're free, and they can really help us sort through the noise.
They can. And the more we use them, the more pressure it puts on AI developers to be more transparent and responsible.
So it's like we have a role to play in shaping the future of AI.
Absolutely. Our choices, our demands, our expectations, they all matter.
This is really making me think about the bigger picture here. Like, what does the rise of AI slop tell us about the relationship between technology and society?
That's a great question. I think it highlights the fact that technology is never neutral. It reflects our values, our priorities, our biases.
So it's not just about the code, it's about the humans behind the code.
Exactly. And I think AI slop is a symptom of this larger trend, this desire for speed and efficiency above all else.
It's like the fast food mentality applied to the digital world.
Right. We want things instantly, and we're often willing to sacrifice quality to get it. And that can have unintended consequences.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that progress isn't always linear, and innovation isn't always a good thing.
Exactly. We need to be mindful of the potential downsides of technology and make sure we're using it in a way that benefits humanity, not the other way around.
That's a powerful thought. So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring us back to that question you posed earlier. As AI becomes more and more embedded in our lives, how do we ensure that it's a force for good? How do we make sure it serves humanity, not the other way around?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, I don't think there's a simple answer.
Yeah, it's something we're all going to have to grapple with as we move forward.
Yeah, that's a huge question, right? And it makes you think about
Makes you think about the bigger picture.
the bigger picture for sure. And, it's easy to get caught up in all the negative stuff, right? Like all the potential harms of AI.
Oh, absolutely, especially with something like AI slop, where it's like, it's eroding trust, it's messing with authenticity.
Yeah, but we shouldn't forget that.
It's a tool.
It's a tool at the end of the day. And like any tool, it can be used for
For good or for bad.
good or for bad, exactly. So let's talk about that for a second. Like, where is AI actually making a positive impact? Where are you seeing, like, the good stuff happening?
Oh, man. There's so many examples, it's hard to know where to start. Like in medicine, for example. Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
It's incredible. AI is being used to diagnose diseases earlier.
Like way earlier than we could before.
Yeah, and with more accuracy, too. And in education, AI is being used to create personalized learning experiences.
So it's like tailored to each student's needs.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And then you've got scientific research where AI is like speeding up discoveries.
Helping us solve those really complex problems like climate change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And developing new drugs, it's just the potential is huge.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. And it seems like every day there's a new breakthrough, like some new application of AI that we hadn't even thought of before.
It's constantly evolving. It's amazing.
Yeah, so it sounds like the key takeaway here is that it's not about being anti-AI.
Right.
It's about being, like,
Thoughtful.
thoughtful, intentional, right? Making sure that we're using AI in a way that actually benefits humanity.
Yeah, we have a choice in how we develop and deploy this technology. We can choose to use it for good.
It's like we need to be the ones in control, right?
Yeah, absolutely. AI should be serving us, not the other way around.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with like a call to action.
Yeah, I like that.
What can we do? What can our listeners do to make sure that AI is used for good?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's about staying informed, staying curious.
Yeah, like don't just tune it out.
Exactly. Stay engaged in the conversation. Read articles, listen to podcasts, talk to people.
Because the future of AI is being written right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping it.
That's right. And remember, the next time you see an image online, just take a moment to pause, to really look at it. If something seems off, too perfect, too strange, just consider the possibility that you might be looking at AI slop.
It's like trust your gut, trust your eyes.
Exactly.
And that, my friends, brings us to the end of our deep dive into the wild world of AI slop. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and that you've learned a thing or two along the way. Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and as always, thanks for listening.